In the bustling city of Riverdale, a sunny afternoon turned into a scene that would ignite debates about justice, power, and accountability. Officers Harris and Daniels, known for their aggressive approach, were patrolling the main streets, a place alive with vendors, artists, and professionals hurrying about their day. Their sharp eyes landed on a man whose calm authority seemed, to them, out of place. Elijah Moore, a dignified man in his early 50s, had just stepped out of a charcoal gray sedan parked near the Civic Center. He was immaculately dressed in a tailored gray suit, a burgundy tie adding a touch of personality. In his hand was a black briefcase, slightly worn but carefully maintained. Elijah's poised demeanor exuded confidence, the kind earned through decades of hard work. But to Harris and Daniels, this was not a man of standing. This was someone who didn't fit their assumptions. "Hey, you!" Harris called out, his tone sharp, commanding attention. "Hold it right there." Elijah stopped, turning to face the officers. His expression was calm, though a flicker of disbelief crossed his eyes. "Is there an issue, officers?" he asked, his voice measured and even. "We received reports of a car like yours involved in suspicious activity nearby," Daniels chimed in, his words laced with an accusatory tone. It was a vague claim, unsupported but convenient. Elijah's brows lifted slightly. "That's a serious claim. I'm happy to cooperate. May I see the report you're referring to?" The request seemed to aggravate Harris. "Hands out where I can see them," he barked, stepping closer. "You're obstructing an investigation." Passers-by paused, their conversations silenced by the scene unfolding before them. Phones appeared, recording as Harris pulled out handcuffs. Elijah offered no resistance, though he couldn't help but murmur, "You're making a mistake." The officers laughed dismissively as they led Elijah away, oblivious to the stir their actions were causing. The next morning, the courtroom was packed. Journalists and citizens filled the gallery, eager to witness the fallout. As Elijah entered in his black robe, the atmosphere shifted. No longer a man in handcuffs, he was the embodiment of authority, every step a reminder of the respect he commanded. "Officers Harris and Daniels," Elijah began, his voice steady but firm. "You're charged with misconduct, racial profiling, and unlawful detention. Do you have anything to say in your defense?" The officers stammered, offering flimsy excuses that dissolved under the weight of the evidence. Videos of their actions played for the court, each frame a damning indictment. Witnesses described the blatant profiling and excessive force. Elijah conducted the proceedings with unflinching professionalism, though the undercurrent of determination in his tone was impossible to miss. By the end, the verdict was clear. Harris and Daniels were suspended pending further investigation, their actions deemed unacceptable in any capacity. The ripple effects were profound. The police department issued a public apology, acknowledging its failure. Meanwhile, Elijah used the incident as a rallying point, spearheading reforms in law enforcement practices. He collaborated with local leaders to implement mandatory training in racial bias and community engagement, ensuring no one else would endure such indignity. For the people of Riverdale, Elijah's resilience became a symbol of hope. His story galvanized a movement, pushing for accountability and systemic change. In time, policies were enacted to prevent similar injustices, and trust between the community and law enforcement began to mend. At the station, Elijah sat in a holding cell, his composure unshaken. Harris and Daniel smirked, swapping taunts as they assumed they'd made a routine arrest. "Thinks he's untouchable," Harris said, leaning against his desk. "Yeah, but he's never seen the inside of a cell," Daniels added with a sneer. Elijah didn't react, his silence unnerving them. Periodically, he requested a phone call, a request repeatedly ignored. Instead, the officers kept him waiting, the hours dragging on as they half-heartedly asked him unrelated questions. Outside the precinct, however, a different narrative was taking shape. Footage of Elijah's arrest, taken by bystanders, had gone viral. The clips showed every baseless accusation, every unnecessary escalation. Social media erupted, demanding accountability. Prominent figures condemned the actions, and the hashtags #JusticeForElijah and #InProfiling began trending. Unaware of the growing outrage, the officers reveled in their apparent victory until a quiet but commanding voice interrupted. Elijah addressed the desk sergeant, his words carrying weight. "I need to inform my office. I'm expected in court tomorrow." The sergeant chuckled dismissively. "Planning to represent yourself?" Elijah met his gaze without wavering. "No, I'm presiding over the hearing." The room fell silent. The sergeant quickly checked the records, his face paling as the truth sank in. Elijah Moore wasn't just another citizen. He was Judge Elijah Moore, a respected figure in the Riverdale Municipal Court. Panic swept through the precinct. The officers' smug demeanor evaporated as the gravity of their mistake became clear. Months after that fateful day, Riverdale felt like a city on the cusp of transformation. The case of Judge Elijah Moore had ignited a wave of conversations that could no longer be ignored. The courtroom decision was just the beginning. Public outrage had evolved into organized efforts, with marches, town hall meetings, and open forums that pushed for real accountability in the justice system. The reforms Elijah championed didn't just bring hope, they brought change. Standing on the steps of the newly renovated Civic Center, Elijah addressed a crowd gathered for a community unity event. His voice, calm yet commanding, carried across the square. "What happened to me could have happened to anyone. And that's the problem. It's not enough to address individual injustices. We must dismantle the systems that allow them to exist." The audience responded with applause, not out of formality, but genuine respect. Elijah's journey from a man wrongfully arrested to a catalyst for reform had inspired a city to look inward, confront uncomfortable truths, and rise to meet them. What had started as a moment of humiliation was now a movement for justice, and Elijah's resolve to bring about systemic change showed no sign of waning. In the months that followed, Riverdale's police force saw an unprecedented overhaul. Harris and Daniels were dismissed after an independent investigation confirmed their long-standing pattern of misconduct. A new police chief was appointed, one who prioritized transparency and accountability. Training programs, mentorship initiatives, and regular community outreach became standard practice. But Elijah's impact extended beyond Riverdale. His story gained national attention, sparking discussions in state houses and city councils across the country. Other municipalities began to mirror Riverdale's reforms, proving that change, while often slow, was possible with the right leadership and collective will. For Elijah, the personal toll of his ordeal was undeniable, but it was outweighed by the sense of purpose it brought. On a quiet evening months later, he sat on a park bench overlooking the river, watching children play and families gather. He smiled faintly, knowing the fight wasn't over, but that progress was undeniable. Justice isn't just a destination, he thought, reflecting on the journey. It's the path we choose to walk every day. And in Riverdale, that path was finally starting to look brighter. Elijah stood and began walking along the riverbank, the golden hues of sunset casting long shadows behind him. As the breeze rustled the leaves overhead, he reflected on the journey ahead. Change was never easy, and resistance to progress was inevitable. But the unity he witnessed among the people of Riverdale gave him hope. Each voice that joined the call for justice, each step taken toward accountability, added to the momentum. He resolved to continue his work, knowing that his role was more than a judge. It was as a bridge builder, uniting communities to create a future where equality wasn't a dream, but a reality.